21 years ago, a 14-year-old student opened fire on a group of praying teens in a high school in West Paducah, Kentucky. He murdered 3. 2 years after that, 2 armed students wearing black trench coats entered the halls of Columbine High School and systematically murdered 12 students and 1 teacher. Then there was West Nickel Mines, a 1-room Amish schoolhouse. 8 little girls were shot. 5 were killed. How about Virginia Tech University? 32 students were killed. Then at Sandy Hook Elementary School, a deranged killer murdered 20 children ages 6 and 7 and also murdered 6 staff members. And then there was the Valentine 2018 massacre at the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. Mass shootings at schools are rare, but they are happening and our children are being maimed and murdered. We have to do more. We have to learn from these horrible tragedies so that we can do all that we can to prevent future murders. We must have a robust school safety plan that includes education, mental health training, target hardening, intervention, prevention, and protection. The critical part of any prevention strategy is to be clear-headed about the threat. There is an infinitesimal small group of people, adults and children, who are capable of committing these kinds of horrible murders. Our collective job is to identify the people with those characteristics and traits that are most at risk for hurting our children, connect the pieces of the puzzle, intervene, and prevent them from ever reaching the point of acting out on their distorted fantasy. Homicidal psychopaths don't get that way overnight. They develop over time. When we study these killers, we find that there are very often clear signs that something was wrong, very wrong, abnormal behaviors, fascination with violence and weapons, antisocial and strange attitudes and beliefs. Families, churches, social service agencies, mental health professionals, schools, regular citizens, juvenile justice, and law enforcement cannot ignore warning signs. We must all report, and more importantly, act when we see something unusual or odd. If you see something or hear something, say something. And then together, we all have to do something. We must connect the dots. We have to get effective services to those who need them so we can prevent future tragedies. There are tragic examples of failure. Look at the homicidal killer who attacked students at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. Repeated warning signs were observed and even reported, but there was no true effective intervention. His antisocial behavior was kicked down the road. The warning alarms were going off, and all the system did was turn off the alarm. They didn't fix the problem. He was a psychopath in the making, and he fell through the cracks. Schools must work with public and private social service providers, law enforcement, and the criminal justice system to make sure appropriate intervention happens sooner rather than later, especially when the antisocial behavior keeps happening. We have to work together to get this done, and we must have a sense of urgency about it. Of course, we have to educate students in age-appropriate ways about the possibility of active assailants. They need to learn to report threats and warning signs they see in others. We must clearly teach them what they need to do if an assailant shows up at their school. We must train teachers and other school personnel about identifying and reporting suspicious behavior and activity. Parents, too, must be educated about identifying and reporting suspicious behaviors. And they need to know what their children are being taught at school about safety techniques so they can reinforce the message at home. We also need target hardening at our schools. For example, campuses must be secure with both physical and human security. External and internal doors need to be capable of being locked and secured. We should not be afraid to use technology, and we must move out of our normal to our new normal of keeping the schools safe. And when all the layers of prevention, intervention, target hardening, safety and security training have failed, and the active shooter is walking down the hallway with a firearm to slaughter your son or daughter, we must have someone, preferably several someones, there with a gun who has been well trained to be your children's last best hope for survival. Armed school guardians or law enforcement officers have to be there to stand in the gap and to shoot the assailant graveyard dead before he can slaughter our children. It is a new normal. We'd rather not have it that way, but that's the reality in 2018. Join us, and we'll guarantee we'll do everything possible to keep our most precious resource, our children, safe.